12 and a member abstained for conflict of interest. Present tonight are Mr. Gruger, Mr. Lavelle, thank you, Mr. Flores. I'm Betty Hollow, and also present are Mr. Pearson of the Code Office and Paul Eschenbach, who is our acting secretary at the moment. And Mr. Miller of the City Prosecutor's Office is also with us. The board operates according to the following procedure. The chair will name and describe the case. The zoning administrator will state the basis of the objection and any applicable facts or conditions pertaining to the case. The appellant or their representative will give reason why the appeal should be viewed favorably. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request will be heard. Anyone wishing to speak in general comment will be heard. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition will be heard. If necessary, the appellant or their representative will offer concluding summary or rebuttal remarks. Testimony from the floor shall be closed. The board will deliberate and render a decision. According to Athens City Code Section 230703B, the board has power to grant variances from the strict application of the code, provided the variance will not be contrary to the public interest, the spirit of the code is observed, public safety and welfare are secured, and substantial justice is done. According to Athens City Code Section 230910C, variances from the code shall not be granted unless the board finds, based on direct, specific findings of fact, that each of the following conditions have been supported: practical difficulty and undue hardship, because of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to a specific piece of property. A literal enforcement of these regulations will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary to the achievement of public purposes. Exceptional circumstances. There are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes in the same zone. Preservation of equal property rights. Literal interpretation of these regulations would deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone and the same vicinity, while the granting of the requested variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied to other properties in the same zone or the same vicinity. Minimum variance. The variance granted is the minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property. Absence of detriment. The authorizing of such variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property and will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning code or the public interest. Not of a general nature. The condition or situation of the specific piece of property or the intended use of said property for which the variance is sought, one or the other or in combination, is not of so general or recurrent a nature as to make reasonably practicable the formulation of a general regulation for such condition or situation. The board also has the power to review decisions of the zoning administrator where an error is alleged. He requests for conditional permitted uses. He requests for substitution of non-conforming uses. Determine the number of required off-street parking spaces if the specific use is not contained in Section 2311 Table B. He requests for temporary use of structures or premises. Consider requests for extension of temporary permits after receiving a recommendation from the Athens City Planning Commission. He requests for business use variances after receiving a recommendation from the Athens City Planning Commission. And he requests for variance from the strict application of the Athens City Code, Title 27, Flood Damage Prevention. Any person, resident, or officer, department, or appointed body of the City of Athens agreed by a decision of the board may petition the Athens County Board of Common Pleas concerning the illegality of the decision. Such petition must be filed within 30 days after the mailing of the decision of the board to the applicant. There are 3 cases on tonight's agenda. Case 0702B is a property at 38 North Court Street. Case 0703B concerns a property at 20 North May Avenue. And case 0704B is requesting a variance for the property at 37 East Carpenter Street. The board is required to take testimony under oath. Anyone wishing to speak concerning any item on the agenda should please stand. and swear or affirm that any testimony you will present to the board will be the truth and the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Okay. So, our first case tonight is 0702V, 38 North Court Street. The appellant is Joe Krause, represented, I believe, by John Valentour, and they are requesting variances from section 230801A, 230801C, and 2311 Table B off-street parking to permit residential occupancy of a structure by 9 occupants, where 9 parking spaces are required, 6 are provided, but 3 are not accessible, and accessibility is required. 1 has an area of 150 square feet, where 180 square feet are the permitted minimum. In addition, sufficient deed-restricted or leased parking may be available, but at a distance greater than 200 feet, which is the required minimum. And so we'll hear from Mr. Pearson, who will give us the sort of specifics of the case.
I think you'll have a general framework from the last board meeting of the number of parking spaces that are available on site. This is an L-shaped property, fronts on Court Street, but comes around to Mill Street. There's a drawing that shows the 6 parking spots, 1 deficient in area, 3 cars behind 3 other cars. 1 for each permitted occupants required, so that'd be a total of 9. So that's all basically the same. I did go to 187, 187 and a half, and 189 North Lancaster Street, where some remote parking was proposed. The file contains some pictures of the existing parking. Those 3 units are all contained in one structure at that site. There are 6 parking spots there now.
At the Court Street parking site? Lancaster. Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. You weren't here at the last meeting.
No, I wasn't here, and I don't have a picture of the parking at Court Street. I have lots of pictures of Lancaster. Yeah, okay. But I don't have a diagram of it so we can see how those spaces lay out.
One more.
This is Lancaster.
One more.
Well, that shows the diagram, but doesn't show where the spaces are.
Parking spaces.
Yes, I know, but I need to see them a little.
Yeah, there is another page here.
Oh.
I'll show you a bigger one.
So what we see here is, this is the available space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So that's space for 5. Where's the dumpster?
It's behind this one.
Here's parking.
Okay.
Mill Street.
Okay, so just come right in off the street, right?
And then a couple pictures there. Here it is. On the property and behind the pigskin, which is one of the tenants. At the property, there's a raised deck and outside patio. The parking goes right up against the patio, the existing parking. Excuse me. So I guess that's, and you can see there's also a dumpster there now also.
Yeah, okay.
It's used for businesses. If parking were going to go in there, that dumpster would have to go out to accommodate the 6 car.
Where would it go? When you say it would have to go out where?
Nowhere.
Nowhere.
Yeah, it's one of the problems that we have with the uptown area because there is quite a bit of waste that's generated. There's no place on a lot of properties to accommodate waste disposal facilities. That's a challenge I know that the Service Safety Director is concerned about, and the new solid waste inspector, who the city will soon hire. Part of their job will be to come up with a proposal for a more efficient way to deliver materials and dispose of materials in the uptown area. So right now there's a dumpster in one of those parking spots.
But even if they moved the dumpster and added a parking spot, that would just be another stacked parking spot, right?
Right. There are 3 full-size spots that go up against the deck behind the pigskin.
Okay.
3 more spots right behind those
That are stacked.
that are stacked.
Okay.
And the one is deficient in area because of the way the lot kind of goes off at an angle. As Mill Street diverges from perpendicular, it pinches back at an angle less than 90 degrees. That's what causes that spot to be diminished in area.
Anybody got questions for Mr. Pearson while he's there? Other things that we should know?
That's the situation at 38 North Court. 6 stacked parking spots, 1 deficient in area.
Okay, so presumably they say they have 6, 1 is too little, 3 is stacked, and they need 9 parking spaces, is that
You
correct?
need 1 for each permitted occupant, and they've
When they're
requested
talking
9
about-
occupants.
So where are they supposed to get these other? Oh, it's at the North Lancaster.
Right. At the end of the last meeting, there was discussion about where there's some parking spots available in the same potential ownership at another property. I had not seen the property or made an evaluation of the parking required for the use, or if there was any additional parking available. Since that time, I did go up. As I mentioned, there are 3 units in one building. It's an R3 zone, so that's a permitted use in the area. There are 6 parking spots right in front of the structure, and you have a pretty good picture that Mr. Valentour provided. The parking that exists at 187, 187 and a half, and 189 North Lancaster. Right there, Greg's got it. Of course.
Right, good.
2 of those spots are illegal non-conforming use. As you look to the ones on the left, parking is not permitted right in front of a building except in front of a garage or a parking area. So
But they are legal non-conforming.
those are 2 legal non-conforming parking spaces.
Okay.
There is a 2-car garage that could accommodate 2, but in that particular photo, you're seeing those cars right up against the garage door.
So
as opposed to being
essentially,
parked in the garage.
the garage is blocked, or creates a stacked parking situation, right?
If you had cars in the garage.
Right, okay. Well, if you were counting them for parking, you would
Right.
have to...
In this
consider that.
particular case, I don't believe, the garage is not being included in the count.
Okay. So then, we just cross that out of our memory.
Right, and the 2 to the right are partially on the property, partially on the street right away of North Lancaster Street.
Do you mean the back ends of them are on the right of way?
Yeah, you have a drawing that I
Okay,
took,
sure.
Mr. Valentour's drawing, and made some
Right,
amendments
okay.
to it. It's part of your packet.
Okay.
But in any case, the existing parking situation that's there for those 3 units is either grandfathered, legal non-conforming. Some spots are conforming, some are not. But there are 6 cars parked in the front right now. When I was up there, 2 of them were blocking the sidewalk, actually, the 2 on the right. But they weren't pulled up nearly as far as they could have been pulled up. It was a very snowy day, and there was a pile of snow there. There's a driveway that goes down the north side of the property that there's an easement for. That's to access parking next door to property owned by Mr. Abdella. There are 2 units there, 2 people in each. They had a 1-car garage and had to put 3 more parking spots in the backyard at 191. So that's why there's a driveway on this property, but it actually creates access to the rear of this property and 191 North Lancaster. So there are 3 gravel parking spots in the backyard at 191. The drawing indicates that 189 that there may be 4 parking spots back there. I think one of them is deficient in width. It's really 3 cars could fit back there. 4 parking spots you have to pave. 3 or less you can leave in gravel. Now those spots were never permitted, but if there was a request to put in 3 gravel parking spots in the backyard, that would be permitted. In an R3 zone, parking lots are permitted, so you can have additional parking there. It's not like an R1 or an R2 zone. It's a very nice driveway that goes down to the backyard. It's fairly steep, but it's a concrete driveway. It's grooved, it's ridged, so you can get up and down it. Yes, sir.
When I went there, there was snow still on it. Nobody cleaned it off, so
Right.
even with
Yeah.
a four-wheeler, I wouldn't have tried to drive down there.
Yeah. When I went up, it was snow covered. No one had shoveled it off. But it does go down to the backyard. And now another thing that would be required in the backyard there around any number of parking spots that were newly created would be a tree buffer, which is not there. You need a 4-foot, at least a 4-foot buffer around the parking area. That could be accommodated fairly easily. A tree planted every 30 lineal feet or portion thereof would have to be planted, and that would really diminish it back to 3 parking spots rather than 4 as they've indicated. Included in the packet I gave you too was a measurement. I did that off Athens GIS. There's a measuring tool that you can use. It's approximately a half a mile from where the residential use is requested up to this parking area. And there's a drawing in there that indicates that too.
Is that as the crow flies?
That's as the crow flies, yes.
So the
So it's
original,
probably right around a half a mile if you
Yeah.
walk up Lancaster Street and up the hill.
you'd still have to walk up because there's no back way down it, or you go through people's yards.
Yeah, you have to go up Lancaster Street because all those other streets up in there, Pine, Ring, North Congress, Mound, are all down from the ridge where Lancaster Street's actually at.
Well, and if you did use the driveway, I assume that one of these cars that's now in the front would not be able to park that one.
You're talking about up on Lancaster?
Yeah.
Of those 6 cars, none of them block the existing driveway.
So where's the driveway?
The driveway's way over on the right, all the way over to
Yeah,
the right.
Out of sight, okay. Any other questions, Mr. Pearson? Comments? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So now we'll hear from Mr. Valentin.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming out tonight to hear these requests. I think, for the most part, Steve indicated the situation, and hopefully you can remember. And Betty I did get a variance for this building a long time ago for a different scenario,
Right.
and that didn't work.
Yeah.
And so the new prospective owners are still trying to come up with a way that we can actually make utilization of the second floor of this building. And first off, I'd just like to, say this isn't an easy thing we're trying to do here. The uptown area is fairly well filled up with buildings or existing parking lots. And for us or anybody to try and to utilize existing vacant space on the second stories of the buildings in Athens is going to be difficult unless we can come up with some kind of a compromise in terms of meeting code, because unless you tear buildings down, we're just not going to be able to provide additional parking and therefore utilize those spaces. And just last week I went to Chillicothe. Somebody called me up and asked me to come over and look at renovating an existing building along their main street downtown. And the contrast to the communities is quite remarkable. I'm amazed that the person wants to do this because in that city, aside from the government buildings, there's absolutely no use on the second floor. Parking is free on the streets. They're dying to try to get people to come downtown. I asked what I should do with the second and third floors of this building. He said there's absolutely never the possibility that these are going to be used for anything. Here in Athens, we've got an opportunity to try and to even make our downtown even more exciting and alive than it is already, and it is a lot more than most other towns. And I think, again, Mr. Krause, and this has an idea, if we can make this project feasible, obviously we're going to have to be able to utilize more of the building than just the first floor. And that's why we tried to come up with this way of satisfying the parking requirement, even though it does not probably satisfy the code in terms of the size of the parking spots, the nature of them, and obviously the location. Now, the parking spots that are on site, the 5, I'm not even counting the one that Steve indicated was too small as being required, because I know that won't happen. Well, I do believe the dumpster belongs to the pigskin personally, and the city, I was working with the community design. I know they're working on a waste management program for the entire city, and a lot of times people provide their own private dumpsters, even though they're not required to, and they actually have to pay separate to get those picked up from what the normal city waste disposal system is. And I think all that is under review and scrutiny right now. So, the removal of that dumpster, I don't know if it's a vital right now. I mean, it's a private facility. There are other ways to take care of the refuge for that business. And the stacked parking notion at that location, at the maximum would be 3 apartments, so most likely they'd be roommates anyway. And it shouldn't be absolutely impossible for a long-term storage situation like that for people to communicate, to get one car out and make sure that they're in the right order. Now, the other issue which came up was that Mr. Krause owns the property on North Lancaster. And in most cases, I have a hard time convincing people that, the only way that anybody's going to even remotely accept this kind of remote parking is if it's deed restricted. And they've actually agreed to that policy if this is permitted, so that the parking at that location would be tied directly to the property on Court Street. The driveway does belong to the property. It was built, actually, and an easement granted to the next door neighbor so that they could get access to their parking behind the adjacent house. Last time I was here, I wasn't really sure how all that was laid out, but that's actually the case. The property abuts the fire station, and the rear yard now is really not, it's not really used for anything, because the house is up on a hill. It's a rather steep driveway, as Steve indicated. So the rear of this property, I mean, one of the best uses that possibly could be would be for extra parking. And hopefully, it's not too far away that it could satisfy, the parking requirements for this particular building uptown. A lot of people use the fairgrounds. I don't think that's much closer than this specific parking lot would be. The reason we're here tonight, instead of trying to wait until we had a full quorum, is I believe, and Joe can indicate at this time, there is a deadline that we're under with the proposal to purchase the property. You might want to allude to that.
Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Joseph Krause, 39 Cable Lane. Our deal with Mr. Wilson is contingent, obviously, in us using the second story for residential space. But the time limit, our due diligence period essentially was running out after the first time. We asked the seller to extend the period. He granted it to us. The impression is we won't get it a second time. So we would have preferred to present this in front of 5 councilmen, but unfortunately we are out of time, so we had to come today. Thank you.
One thing that Steve indicated, there's 3, not 4 extra parking spots over on the street, the North Lancaster Street. But again, I think that sometimes you have to give a little consideration to long-term storage parking requirements versus Walmart-type parking, where you have people coming in and out all the time. The size of the spot could probably be slightly smaller, and it would not really create a problem with people in their cars, traffic, moving in and out of traffic lanes, because it's not really the intent, in this case, to have a steady flow of traffic from the rear of this driveway onto the street. So the full 180 square foot per car, or 10 by 18 or 9 by 20, I think we're short just a little bit, maybe a foot, to make that requirement in that specific case. And again, to your concern about the snow on there, I don't think anybody's using that right now. So neither side, neither property is utilizing the rear for parking, so I don't think there's any real reason at this point in time for the landlords to be plowing that driveway. Any questions?
I guess not. Thank you very much. Okay. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this variance? Is there anyone who wishes to
I got a
speak?
question. Mr. Valentour, my understanding from reading a couple of letters we received that 2 of those parking spaces are leased.
Excuse me?
My understanding is 2 of those parking spaces are already leased.
To the rear?
Yeah.
I think they'd probably go with the old owner of the building, the lease to the building. I'm not
So
sure.
if the person buys the building, he's going to break the contract for the lease?
I'm not sure how that would work. Joe, are you familiar with any of that?
Not so much money. I would imagine
No, I believe it's being held till 2010 or 9.
Right, that's what I thought.
So, yeah, it's been like,
It is nice.
So what exactly does that mean, Mr. Ford?
Well, it's not.
the 2 doesn't work.
So two of
Two
those spaces
spaces.
are not currently available. They're
Right.
3 years they were available.
Right.
Okay.
Unless they break the contract.
Okay. So, okay, all we know then is that there is a lease in place that permits these 2 spaces
spaces.
to the current owner.
So there's only 1 space that's available.
Okay.
It's 2.
No, okay, that's helpful to know. Well, now, we're speaking with somebody
just
in general
questions.
comment? Okay,
General
other
comment.
questions? Okay. Okay, so other people who speak in general comment? Yes.
I did fail to mention receipt of 2 letters that are included in the file. One just came today, and you each have a copy of that from former Councilman Dale Tamke.
We're going to read those as opposition, please.
And then also included in the packet of information you received was something that Mr. John Wharton, owner of Bronies, gave me, and he indicated to me that that was part of the discussion when he was requesting the Uptown Merchants Association to support his outdoor patio. So there's no date on it, there's no signature, but that's what Mr. Wharton had indicated to me that that
Okay.
letter applied to.
Okay, and so we get to the place where if there's people in opposition, I'm going to read these into the record because the council does that these people wish that to happen.
I both requested they be read.
Okay, so this is a letter dated February 13, 2007. Yes, in opposition. Did I say opposition? Yes. Okay, to the Board of Zoning Appeals in case 0702D. The purpose of this note is to express my concern regarding proposed variance for the property located at 38 North Court. It is my understanding that one of the variances requested for this property involves how the appellant would provide adequate parking for the number of tenants proposed. My concern is that the solution the board allows would recognize the following. Accessibility of the parking spaces is a critical issue. Stack parking is a distant second-best solution and often creates more problems than it solves, particularly in a mixed-use situation. As a former member of Athens City Council, I can say with confidence that the existing parking requirements did not envision stacked parking in the uptown area as properly meeting the requirements. I hope the board will not approve a variance that allows or encourages stacked parking. 2, accommodating parking spaces for businesses is equally important to providing residential parking in a mixed-use situation. If all the available space is devoted to residential tenant parking, business parking is forced onto the street or into other areas. Deliveries are more difficult to make and receive. I hope the board will not approve a variance that worsens the overall parking situation uptown. Solid waste disposal in the uptown area requires thoughtful solutions. Dumpsters have proven to be effective ways of keeping trash off of the streets uptown. The proposed use will create more solid waste. If the proposed parking arrangement eliminates the space for the dumpster behind the property, there is likely no other place for the trash to go except on the street by the curb. I hope the board will recognize that there should be space reserved for a dumpster on the property, preferably one that can handle the increased volume of trash that will be generated by more intensive residential use, and that a variance that eliminates space for a dumpster is unwise. 4, the appellant suggests that 6 spaces, quote, are provided, unquote. I hope the board will clarify how many of these spaces are currently leased to current tenants and what the term of the current leases is. And I believe Mr. Flores has already spoken to that and Mr. Liddell has clarified it. It would seem that if spaces are currently leased, then those spaces would not be available to meet the parking requirements for the proposed use until the termination of the leases. Also, remote parking beyond the 200-foot limit should be carefully scrutinized. I appreciate the thoughtfulness with which the board approaches its important work. I hope the board will consider my input as it convenes to discuss case 0702D this evening. Sincerely, Dale Pankey. And this is the other letter that Mr. Pearson alluded to. It was sent to us from John Horton, who said that he wanted it put in the file for 38 North Court Street. It is apparently a letter that Mr. Horton got in response to his own request of the Uptown Merchants Association to support his desire to keep an outdoor patio at Brony's at 7 West Carpenter Street, which was a recent case before us. He also asked that it be read aloud, and here is the letter. The Pigskin Grill believes that zoning and parking regulations are important to keep the uptown area vital. The number one complaint we hear as uptown business people is that there is no parking uptown, and the reason people don't come up here is that they can't find places to park. Allowing a business to circumvent sensible zoning regulations related to parking through a variance or other extraordinary measures flies in the face of good public policy. At the same time, we don't believe that this business association should come down on the side from our customers, which we would be doing if we issued a letter of support for a parking variance for Brony's. So apparently he had asked them to support his effort to keep this outdoor parking space instead of outdoor patio instead of parking, and at least the Pigskin did not want to do that as part of the Uptown Merchants Association. So there are 2 strong letters in opposition to this proposal.
It's directly underneath the...
Yes, it's the grill at Brony's up there right at the end of Court Street where he wanted to park spaces and not park the spaces and have an outdoor patio. And he had asked the Uptown Merchants Association to support that, and apparently not everybody was willing to do it because they need parking for their customers. Okay, anybody else who wants to say anything about this before we go through the findings or discuss the situation? Comments, please, from you all before we start? Thank you. Just want to go through the things. Okay, the first thing we have to consider is practical difficulty and undue hardship.
Shouldn't we make a move?
Yes, we should. Every time I forget that. Would you please do that?
I move that we grant a variance to the property located at 38 North Court Street, case number 07-02B, zone B2-D, John Valentor and Joe Cross being the appellants. Appellant is requesting variances from sections 23.08.01A, 23.08.01C, and 23.11 Table B, off-street parking requirements to permit residential occupancy of a structure by 9 occupants where 9 parking spaces are required and 6 are provided, 3 of which are not accessible where accessibility is required, and 1 of which has an area of 150 square feet where 180 square feet is the permitted minimum. In addition, sufficient deed, restricted, or leased parking may be available at a distance greater than 250 feet from the road where such distance is the maximum permitted.
Thank you. Second for that?
I'll second.
So our first thing to consider is practical difficulty or undue hardship because of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to a specific piece of property. The literal enforcement of the regulations will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary to the achievement of public purposes. So what say you to that?
Well, I say there are none. I think it's self-imposed by the appellant wanting to put in 9 apartments or 9 rental units.
Okay. Other comments?
And there's other parking spaces around. You have Bob's Pickpack Tees is down there. That's pretty close to 250. You have the Armory. You have the First Christian Church.
Well, none of those would be deed restricted. I suppose they might possibly be leased,
It could
although
have
we
been
have to...
leased on an annual basis. There
Okay.
should have been,
Okay, so you're suggesting that something else might be considered?
outside the box.
Okay, although I'm sure he probably thought that his own ownership was the reason for doing that, but I think you're right. No one is going to walk half a mile